What we found in the research is that well into the high 90% of people agreed that it was a good idea to be adaptable, to let go of the plan. But when we asked about the specific behaviors of adaptability, like letting go of a plan that isn't working out, 1/3 of respondents said, absolutely not, quitters never win. I stay positive by not always staying positive. When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, you can't even see a red flag. If we buy into the belief that our attitude earns us the right to a certain outcome, I think we're gonna, in fact, be very fragile. I always thought I would be a mom. But because of cancer at age 26, I found out it's not a good idea for me to ever have a baby. And then I went on to have cancer 3 more times. My supersized goal is to leave a legacy. That no matter how long I get to be on this planet, and I don't know, when I leave, I am leaving behind a legacy. And so adopting and mentoring and my volunteer work all play into that, but so does starting 2 nonprofit organizations. So all of these, this is what I call parallel plans. They all feed in. And that way, if any one of these plans gets derailed, that's okay, because I have other plans that I can lean on that will get me to my supersized goal, which is the one that actually matters, but I wasn't even aware of it.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Changing Minds podcast. My name is Owen Fitzpatrick, and today I am joined by a very dear friend of mine, Courtney Clark. If you've ever wondered if you're the only person that's been forced to do more with less and expected to do it faster, or if you're the kind of person that feels so stressed that you don't have time to read an internet article that tells you how to de-stress, and as a result you get even more stressed, well, you are in luck, because you're about to listen to someone who has a remarkably good ability to help us to be able to deal with a lot of the adversity and challenges and changes that are a natural part of the modern world. Courtney has done enormous things in terms of with so many different audiences, assisting them and helping them to become much more resilient. She founded her first company when she was 29 years old. She's the author of 3 books. She's recovered from cancer multiple times and is a really inspiring figure that ensures that when you leave her events or her keynotes, you're equipped with everything that you need to be able to handle some of the hardest challenges in life. She's here today to talk to us particularly about her latest book, which is called The Shortcut: How Flexible Goal Setting Outperforms Grit Every Single Time. And we're going to be looking at really the most important elements or some of the mistakes that we tend to make in order for us to be as successful as possible. Basically, if Pollyanna and Rocky Balboa had a love child, it would be our speaker today. She's worked with the likes of Nike, Dell, and Google around the world. Courtney, it is such a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks so much, Owen.
So let's get going and let's start by talking a little bit about this idea that you brought to the table, right? You've written a number of books today, but I think it was the Giving Prescription on the importance of giving in terms of healing, and also the successful struggle, and some amazing tools with regards to resilience. But in this particular book, you dove into the notion of flexible goal setting as opposed to, just working through it. Well, grit is personified quite well in the famous book by Angela Duckworth in terms of passion and perseverance, and keep going in the messy middle and you can do it. But you have a totally different perspective. Would love to hear you explain from your point of view, what is it about flexible goal setting in particular that provides us with a solution to a lot of the challenges we face today?
You got it. And I think it's important to say, I am not against grit. Grit is wonderful. It is an incredibly helpful tool. I just don't want it to be the only tool in your toolbox. And I started to reach a point where I felt like that was happening for a lot of people. So I am, as you said, I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. And going through challenges like that, but I've also been through a divorce. I've been let go from a job. A lot of the challenges that we all face in our life. And something that I realized about resilience and the way we talk about resilience is that it's not much about positivity as it is about adaptability. That's the most important element. And I had this realization that this over-reliance on grit that I think that we've culturally leaned into is making us less adaptable to change.
So I think me and you, we've had a number of discussions or conversations when we met up in terms of, we know each other, of course, from the National Speakers Association. And one of the things that struck me about a lot of the way in which you're thinking and your attitude or perspective is very much around this notion of being able to let go and give up on certain things. And I know there's, Annie Duke released a book connected to this notion of letting go or quit, I think it was called.
Yep.
But from your perspective, what are the most important things that we need to think about in order for us to make the decision as to when to adapt or change our goal?
Well, the research that we did supports the notion, and I loved Annie Duke's book, Quit. What I wanted to add to the conversation are answering questions like, why are we not quitting? And how do we let go of a plan that isn't working out? And what we found in the research is that this over-indexing on grit and perseverance, never give up, you can do anything you put your mind to, it's growing out of this idea that if you just work longer and harder, there's nothing that you can't accomplish, which it's not bad to persevere. It's that oftentimes the solution to a problem is work longer, work harder, try more, dig deeper, but not always. And we have to be able to balance what I call grit resilience with growth resilience. And growth resilience is that pivot, adapt, but we can't change if we aren't willing to let go of the plan. So what we found in our research is that well into the high 90s% of people agreed that it was a good idea to be adaptable, to let go of the plan. They wanted their bosses, their clients, their coworkers to be flexible and to be able to find a different way to do things. They wanted their kids to be able to be adaptable and to pick themselves up when life doesn't give them exactly what they want. So everybody agreed that the idea of adaptability is good. But when we asked about the specific behaviors of adaptability, like letting go of a plan that isn't working out, trying something different, pivoting to a backup option, letting go of a goal that is no longer achievable, 1/3 of respondents said, absolutely not, quitters never win. And another 1/3 were like, ooh, possibly.
So with that in mind, and I'm interested in your take on that. So from an interpretation point of view, and obviously you're, close to the data and you saw what they said, there's obviously a number of issues there. One is the beliefs that they have about, literally they said it there. It's like quitters never win. You can't be a quitter. The negative association with that notion, right? Something that you're pushing back against. And again, the other notion of any joke or whatever is pushing back against. Then there's the sunk cost effect, right, as well. Of course, we've invested so much time and energy and effort into this. We don't want it to be for nothing, right? And a very well-known psychological variable. Besides those two, were there any other things that came to mind, or even in looking at those two, what were the main things that were this is why people are struggling with the behaviors around growth resilience?
So people identified for us a lot of reasons. There was identity, right? This is who I am. I know that's something that you care deeply about in your research. If I let go of this desire, this goal, then who am I? There were things like promise, right? I made a promise to someone else. I am a person who is divorced in the past. There's a lot that is holding us to jobs or marriages, belief systems, cultures that may not serve us anymore. But it's but I made a promise. I said I would do this, and I need to see it through. There are a great many reasons, but a lot of them centered around either not letting yourself down or not letting someone else down.
And so the response then to that, and I know you cover quite a lot of this in the book, but how do you then help people to be able to make that breakthrough, given the fact that, because when you're talking about something as deeply entrenched as their culture or their identity or their promises to other people, what makes them reliable, what makes them a good person, right, or a good friend or a good, partner or whatever, what are the kinds of strategies or the kinds of approaches that you took during the book, and what do you do in terms of, your keynotes and the other work that you do to help folks to be able to overcome those kinds of blocks to, being able to change those behaviors?
What we realized that we had to show people a way to let go of a strategy and a plan without letting go of what that desire meant to them. So we call it goal supersizing. And all that goal supersizing is it's a strategy that allows you to find the goal behind the goal. The meaning underlying why you set that goal in the first place. So if take, for example, where you and I are talking, it's early in the year. People may have set back in January 1st, they set a New Year's resolution. A lot of them are about money, health. So say somebody sets a goal that they're going to lose 20 pounds, right? That's their goal, is to lose 20 pounds. Well, I would tell you that that's not a supersized goal. That's actually a plan. And the difference between a goal and a plan is that a plan really just has one way to get there. If you get there one step and then this leads to the second, and then, with you lose 20 pounds, I'm going to lose 5 pounds and I'm going to lose 10 pounds. And if at any point, say you injure yourself, right? You're working out so hard, you injure yourself, then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I can't lose 20 pounds. I only lost 8 pounds. I failed at my goal. But if we recognize that that's not really a goal, if we supersize the goal and we realize the goal might be to live long enough to play with our grandchildren on the floor, then you realize 20 pounds is just one of what I call a parallel plan to get there. And so we're showing people how to change their plans, but still work towards that big goal, that overarching goal that is more like a value, an ideal, or a purpose than just, I'm going to accomplish this thing. That's not really a goal. That's a plan.
So with that in mind, and I think that this is great stuff. And an example of that I heard recently was in the book, 5 Types of Wealth by Daniel Bloom. One of the things he talks about is, will you be fit enough to dance at your 80th birthday, right? Which I think was a nice sort of example maybe of the supersizing goal. But the only challenge with that I see, and again, would love to hear how you tackle this, is sometimes with regards to setting goals, if something is, and even something so compelling or powerful, like for example, being able to dance at that or being able to be fit enough for your grandkids, sometimes it could be a little bit too far out into the future, almost difficult to grasp, because the person that you're going to be, like, there's the present bias, and it's almost like sometimes the research suggests that when we think about ourselves in the future, it's almost like a different person. How do you then tackle the challenge of, okay, well, the supersized goal is now so far out there that it's not as present? I need to feel, okay, this is something that I can see myself getting closer to all the time. How do you do that without falling into the trap, to your point, of making it a plan again?
Of keeping it too small? So what I'd argue, actually, is that by creating a supersized goal, you are actually able to do something about it today. Hear me out. So what came to your mind was this story of a guy who wants to be able to dance at his 80th birthday. But really his supersized goal is a physically healthy body and a joyous, healthy mind. And so a supersized goal is actually not so big that it's in the distant future. it is actually also so small that it is the through line that starts today. For most people, when they find a supersized goal, they will realize that it's actually something that already matters to them, that they're already seeing play out in their life and already trying to live it out. And I'll use my own example. I always thought I would be a mom. But because of cancer at age 26, I found out it's not a good idea for me to ever have a baby. And then I went on to have cancer 3 more times. So we know that my cancer is going to come back. I have to be especially careful. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow. And people said, oh, you can foster, you can volunteer, be a cool aunt. Maybe someday they'll allow someone with your health history to adopt. And I did end up adopting a teenager. I also am a mentor to a young woman who found me when she was in college because she was doing research on resilience, and she reached out. I work with kids aging out of foster care. What I realized is that my supersized goal, not to have a baby or even to be a mom, it's actually bigger than that. My supersized goal is to leave a legacy. That no matter how long I get to be on this planet, and I don't know, when I leave, I am leaving behind a legacy. And so adopting and mentoring and my volunteer work all play into that, but so does starting 2 nonprofit organizations. And my 4th book is being published this spring. And so all of these, this is what I call parallel plans. They all feed in. And so when you find your supersized goal, it's not, this is the thing I'm going to do decades from now. It's like, this is the thing that I'm probably already doing, but I haven't even recognized it. It's the fuel that was leading me to set my other plans that I was calling goals. And now that I'm aware of it, now I can be more intentional about what these parallel plans are. And that way, if any one of these plans gets derailed, can't have a baby, we can't lose 20 pounds this year, that's okay, because I have other plans that I can lean on that will get me to my supersized goal, which is the one that actually matters, but I wasn't even aware of it.
I love that. And in particular, I think the one thing that occurs to me that you're doing is you're taking, because when we say leave a legacy, that's one thing. A lot of people talk about leaving a legacy, but when you talk about it, you make it real. Like there's a viscerality about it. So it's like, as you're helping them to have these supersized goals, it's not just about, let's say, the cliche, leave a legacy. The way you describe it really dictates exactly what that looks like. In other words, it's not just some vague out there, be healthy when you're older. There's a whole set of, I suppose, realistic experiences.
It's doable. Yeah, it's doable now.
Yeah, because sometimes the danger is that you say something like leave a legacy, and then that's so vague or so out there.
Someday I'll do something.
That it's like, you don't even know what direction you're going in, therefore you don't know whether or not you're doing it. But the way you described it was so specific, and I got it, and I was like, oh, okay. And it really is in the present moment, as you said. So I think that's an important thing to call out as well, is that the way you describe this supersizing goal, and even, the parallel paths or whatnot, or parallel plans, this is, the specificity is one of the things that turns this from a vague sort of general, I want to be healthy in the future, to, I don't know, what does that actually look like in the real world? You also have a really cool terms, was it stoptimism? Could you share a little bit about stoptimism? You come up with some great names and terms in this book. Would love to understand a little bit more about, stoptimism.
Yeah, I love a little wordplay. Well, the idea that I wanted to combat is that, stopping or quitting or giving up, that is automatically negative, right? It's like, well, I've got to just admit that I can't do this anymore. And I wanted people to know That's not what this is about. This isn't about you just have to be honest with yourself that you can't do everything. That's part of it. Not all things are possible. I am never going to be an NBA basketball player, but
That you never know. No,
I do know. I have seen me play sports. Maybe you haven't, but there's actually something incredibly positive about focusing on the paths that are paying off, because resources are limited. Again, I'm going to go back, my own health is a limited resource. My time on this earth might be a limited resource. So it was incredibly important for me to make sure I am focusing my time, effort, and energy, also my money. We want to invest in things that are going to pay off. And so that's why sunk cost fallacy is so painful, right? Because you're halfway down a path and you're like, but I have already invested in this. But I've heard that described as like, you get on a train going the wrong direction. You should get off the train as soon as you realize you're going the wrong direction, because every moment you stay on the train is just taking you further in the wrong direction. And so stoptimism is the healthy, positive realization that you found a different path. You're gonna let go of this path that's not working out and find another path. And it was really shocking in our research how many people would not let go or reconsider a goal even if they realized it wasn't working out. We interviewed salespeople. You would think, salespeople, if anybody wants to achieve their goal, they know how to set a goal and measure their goal and go after it. We found that if salespeople were more than halfway through the year, but less than halfway to their goal, the vast majority of them wouldn't change a thing. They would just keep going. They would just be like, I'm just going to keep closing deals. They wouldn't change their strategy. But the math doesn't math with that. We love setting a plan and sticking to the plan. And so I think it's incredibly important that we just examine that sometimes grit is the right tool and sometimes we need a different tool.
One other thing that I wanted to ask you about, Courtney, is with regards to the cancer diagnosis, right? 4 times. What is it that you do inside your head, or what perspective or mindset or attitude or beliefs have helped you to cope and still help you to cope as you expect at some point that they come? How did you engineer? Because I'm sure you didn't get the first diagnosis and go, oh yeah, no problem, I'm just going to apply these resilience tools and, oh, I'm fine, everything's good, and then you're grand for that time. So because it's such a, pertinent and impactful experience getting diagnosed like that, 4 times, how do you avoid, and I'm sure there's times where you can't, where you just fall into the trap of, really, are you kidding me? What, me again? What is going, how did you stay sane, and how did you keep yourself moving forward when you dealt with that incredible, traumatic experience on multiple occasions?
Well, this is very much why I gathered these resilience tools. I care about this. I started researching this for a reason. I didn't have these tools when I was first diagnosed at 26. But I think that what worked for me was gathering as much information as possible. I'm a research nerd, as you know. And then looking back, I realized what helped me so much was self-efficacy, the control. So I didn't choose cancer, but I was able to choose my doctor and my hospital. I was able to choose my treatment plan, and having the control that I had, which admittedly was not as much control as I would have liked, but exercising control in all the ways that I could exercise control, that made me feel a lot more powerful. And then, of course, a support system. I had loved ones, but none of my friends, none of my family even had at that point been diagnosed with cancer. So I had their love and support, but I also went out and I found an online support group of young adults with cancer, other people who knew what it was like to think about how is this going to impact my fertility. I went through a divorce. Like, who's going to want to date me, divorced, covered in scars, can't have babies, pretty gun shy, right? But by 27 years old. But this group understood that. And as to your question about, that sense of why me, this isn't fair, why do these things always happen to me? I actually got an answer to that question. Nobody ever gets an answer to the question, why do these things always happen to me? I got an answer several years ago, in between cancers 3 and 4. I discovered that my cancer is caused by my World Trade Center exposure. I had just graduated from college. I was working in Lower Manhattan, and we thought it was safe to come back to work. And so I spent a lot of time in that 1.5-mile radius that we now know increases cancer risk. I think they said like 20-fold. The cancers are incredibly common if you spent a great deal of time in that 1.5 mile area around the World Trade Center in those months following. So I'm probably going to keep getting cancer.
What strikes me though is that you, despite it all, you still are like, and every experience I've had with you is you've got such a wonderful positive energy, and and really radiate a warmth to everyone. But just lastly on that, how do you maintain that positive? Like, look, life is tough in general. Life is hard as it is for anybody in any context. If you turn on the news or anything like that, it's even worse. There's a lot of struggles that we face as human beings. And on top of that, if you're dealing with what you've had to deal with, but given all of that, how do you remain positive?
You know my secret? I stay positive by not always staying positive. I think that if you buy into the belief that it's a good thing to always be anything, but especially positive, then that's toxic positivity, and you're faking it, you're forcing it, and that is going to crack after a while. And so that's a huge part of why this work matters to me, because it's not that forced positivity. It's not, just stay positive, just keep working and you'll do anything you put your mind to. Like, that's baloney. That's not always going to be the case. And so if we buy into the belief that our attitude earns us the right to a certain outcome, I think we're going to, in fact, be very fragile. I think a much stronger way to be is to not always be positive and happy. The reason that I'm so touched that you say that, when we are together, when we're with our colleagues, that it seems like I'm very warm. I think because I am very gentle with my own feelings and with other people's feelings, and I'm honest about my own experiences, which maybe allows people to feel like they can be honest with theirs. Positivity is great if you actually feel it. And if you don't, and you're trying to force it because it's the right way to be, and you see all the memes on social media, or people just say, oh, life doesn't give you more than you can handle, so you should feel a certain way. That's gonna make you feel way worse. So I'm very open to not always feeling positive or good, and that allows me to be positive all the other times when it's appropriate to be positive.
I think that's a wonderful answer. I love that answer. But you were holding back one reason why you're so happy, and that's because you've got 3 dogs. right? You can't do that happening. And three dogs in a husband, right?
Yeah,
Which and a former racing car driver husband, I believe.
there's a lot of love in my house, and that does help.
Yeah. Quick thing, just in terms of the research, in my latest book, I talk in Inner Propaganda, I talk about the feelings that we feel playing a huge part in determining whether or not we believe something is, whether or not it feels right. And oftentimes the way we describe things does it feel right to me? Our gut feelings can be an enormous resource of wisdom, but other times they actually lead us astray. Largely, I argue, because it's not always easy to know what your gut feeling is telling you, right? So we don't know if that's our gut or if it's fear or if it's our desire masquerading as a gut feeling. And that's why we look at red flags and we don't see red flags. We'd love to hear a little bit about what you found with regards to gut feelings and how they impede can impede our capacity or ability to be able to make the changes we need to.
Sure. You know what you just said made me think of? When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, you can't even see a red flag.
Yeah.
So what I typically say about your gut feeling, people say, like, go with your gut. And the problem, of course, as you know, is that your gut is meant to be a pattern recognition machine. When people say that, their gut is talking to them, what they're really seeing is that they have noticed a disruption in a pattern. And like, oh, I noticed someone following me, right? I got this bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. What they're noticing is a change, a difference. And so your gut is very good at pattern recognition. Oh, this is comfortable. We've been here before. This feels safe. But for that reason, your gut is not very good at change or innovation. Your gut is, in fact, going to throw up the red flag and be like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel comfortable. I don't. And that's normal, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If you are trying to innovate, if you are trying to grow and be better than you were yesterday, your gut is, by its very nature, going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be uncertain, and it's going to be like, whoa, this isn't anywhere that I've been before. Therefore, it must be unsafe. But that's faking you out. And that's keeping you doing things the way we've always done it.
Great. And then again, the key is to be able to become, or how I would argue it is, to become more emotionally fluent. So you're able to recognize the emotions that you're feeling and understanding a little bit more about why you feel what you feel, what's going on in your body. Because even the more vocabulary we use, the more we're able to describe our feelings, the more equipped we are to be able to make better decisions or smarter decisions.
For sure. Well, and speaking of flags, I've likened it to so there's a yellow flag that I talk about. I found this phrase in the research called first thought wrong. So it comes from the world of addiction counseling. Like when people are recovering from addiction, they're taught first thought wrong as a way to like throw a yellow flag and be like, wait, hang on. Before you do that, before you say that, do you want to, is that your final answer? Or was that your gut? Is that, the way you've done things in the past, but that's the pattern that you're trying to break? And so I love that first thought wrong. Like that first thought, that's the old you. Your first thought is your gut. It's the way you've always done it. And if we're trying as an individual, if we're trying as a company to do things different, better, more evolved than the way we've always done it, we've got to question that first thought. We can't just think, oh, my gut is telling me the truth.
No. Quick fire round. Favorite movie?
The American President, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Clueless. Real wide.
Favorite author?
Oh, gosh. You know what? Guilty reading pleasure. I love a Patricia Cornwell.
That's okay. Favorite artist?
Monet.
Favorite musician?
I'm a Broadway musicals girl. Give me Steven Schwartz's soundtrack to Pippin any day.
All right. Favorite philosopher?
I don't know. Don't make me choose.
Favorite TV series?
The Good Place. Full of flop.
That's very correct. If you could have any superpower, what would you have?
I'd like to fly.
If you could go anywhere in the past, present, or future in a time machine, where would you go and met?
Belle Epoque, Paris.
When is that?
Belle Epoque. Oh, like the 1800s?
1800s, okay. Where would you live if you weren't living where you're living?
Somewhere by the ocean.
And if you weren't doing what you're doing, what else could you be doing?
I thought I was going to be on Broadway, but if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I think I would want to work with animals.
And finally, if you were to give one message to the world, what would that message be? What would you want to say to everybody on planet Earth?
Take the detour.
Beautiful. Courtney, first of all, where could people get your book? This is toward the end of March, so it's before the big launch. Where can people go and get your book and review it? And also, how can people find out more information about you?
Sure. Well, you can find me at CourtneyClark.com. And the shortcut is going to be available on April 7th. It'll be Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, anywhere you get your books. And I would love reviews, especially on things like Amazon, Goodreads. Really, anywhere that you want to say something about it, I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I, for one, am definitely going to be reviewing the book, and I encourage all of you that are watching and listening, please do review her book. It really helps, and this is going to be an amazing resource for you to be able to handle a lot of challenges. It's an excellent book, really well done as ever by Courtney, and highly recommended. So get your hands on a book. Please do review the book and spread the word and let more people know. Courtney, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the Changing Minds podcast.
Thank you, Owen. If they've never been through anything difficult in their life, they probably don't need to check out the book. But
there you go. So thanks very much, Courtney. Thanks, everyone. For now, I'm looking forward to seeing you all again. We are going to take a little bit of a hiatus. This is the last episode of this season, and we will be changing names and rebranding and doing all sorts of exciting things, and we will be back in a few weeks. This is an exciting time, so enjoy. Make sure you get Courtney's book. But for now, take care, be well. May the force, as always, be with you, and we will see you again. Thanks again, Courtney. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.